Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan MACRI, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. We are recording this just before 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. I like to do that because you never know when people are listening, if some news may have dropped or whatever. That's the only reason I do that when we do these things on the weekends. And I am pleased to see here on my screen for the first time since Friday night. My goodness gracious, how the vibes have changed in the last 30. Let's see, when were they up by 14? That was at about like 9 o'clock. Jeremy Cohen, I should say. Hello, Jeremy. Probably
hey,
9 p.m. on Friday night. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So we're like 38 hours. Did I do the math correct? 38 hours removed from that. That sounds about right. Right.
I'll just say yes. Too tired to really analyze it.
Dude, I'll tell. Oh, I get to tell you on the air. I told Andrew off air. Very, very quick aside before we get into some really inspiring Knicks basketball talk. We got a puppy yesterday. Yes, we got a puppy yesterday. My wife texted me Friday morning. She's like, "Hey, this dog could be ours," and I was like, "That's great, wonderful." She's been wanting a dog for years, and like she had put her name on a list or something. So we got a puppy. So I'm not going to go through the whole training part of it, but like we were told that if the dog starts whimpering in the middle of the night, that means it has to go to the bathroom. So we put the cage downstairs. So I'm like, I'll sleep on the couch downstairs, and if I hear the dog whimpering, I will let it out to do its business, which it did, and I did, and everything was great. But it was 5 a.m, and I couldn't fall right back asleep. I'm like, I can't go through today having woken up at 5 a.m. So I doused some NyQuil, and because I have a little bit of a runny nose too. And so my alarm woke me up like an hour ago, or like a little bit more than an hour ago, and I'm still in like NyQuil land because I think the NyQuil does not really finish setting in for another. So when I tell you I'm a little out of it today, Jeremy, I'm a little out of it today. I just want to put that out there right off the bat before anything gets said. That's all.
I got your back. Don't worry. As someone who is, well, you are too, but as someone who's perpetually tired, really my own reason. Like I'm just dumb about it.
But NyQuil tired is different than regular tired because it feels like someone like took a sledgehammer to your brain.
That's very true. I have not had NyQuil in the recent past, so okay. Don't worry. I'll carry you. It's fine.
Well. I mean, you do. Well, how would that be different?
No. It's totally different.
I have a question.
Yes.
Does the dog have a name?
I probably should have said that at the top. The name of the dog is Madison.
Oh, it's a human. Okay, it's a human name.
It's also the name of a fairly well-known building on 34th Street, but yes.
Okay, it's true.
I'm against naming dogs human names unless it's really funny. Like the old Family Guy like joke
Frank?
Of a cat named Paul. Like that's
a cat named Paul.
That's fantastic. But I'm against naming animals after foods. That to me, because then also I love the animal.
Yeah.
But then eventually, every time I think of that food, once they've gone, I'm just gonna get a little nostalgic.
Well, the dog's given name. The dog was named Clementine apparently before we got it. Yeah. So we're not going to stick with Clementine. So that's why we went for. I shouldn't say we. My wife was like, "We're going to name the dog Madison," and I said, "Okay, that sounds great."
I'll say it's after the avenue, and then it's fine. Illustrious Avenue, trendy shops, chic. It's Madison,
and it's Maddie for short too. So that's great.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Other direction for me on that one. No, I'd stick with Madison. But that's just me. It's your dog. You do what you want.
Yes, sure. It is my dog. Andrew, is that we're good now?
I just genuinely wanted to know if Thibs was in play, if Brunson was a name for the dog.
Stop it.
What? I don't know if you recognize how much of a possibility to anybody listening, you naming a dog Thibs was going to be. Go on 4-hour walks.
If we're going... What would have been funny is if we named the dog Cat, K-A-T.
You know what? That actually, see, that to Jeremy's point, that's a funny name for a dog.
That is a funny name.
Name a cat. Yeah.
But again, everybody,
it's Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yeah, short for Karl-Anthony Towns. Okay. We've been talking for 5 minutes. We haven't done a blessed thing. Let's try to get back on track. So yeah, the vibes were better when we were about midway through that Oklahoma City game at T-Squared Social. Then things started to go downhill. And it's funny, you said to me, as they were up, I forget at what point of the game, but when they were doing pretty good, you were like, because you picked 4-0 last week after I picked 3-1, and you were like, I'm going to be so effing pissed if they win this game and then they lose the game to the Bulls, and you win and I lose. And I said,
just to be clear, I said if the Knicks if they win this game and lose the Bulls, I will light myself on fire. I just want that to be exactly for the record. Yes, I would. We
want to get that right.
Right. And now I don't have to do that because they blew both of the games and I should have picked 2 and 2, but whatever.
I'm always here for a good self-immolation joke. And they lost both games. And after you said it to me and after, the game unfolded the way it did, and I obviously today, a big part of basically the whole conversation today is going to be about this team. I think the sustainability, when it comes to energy and the expenditure thereof is going to be the topic of the day. But like they gave everything they had, I think, in that Thunder game. And as it unfolded, I'm like, oh, and I kind of had thought this even before the Thunder game because like, again, second night of a back-to-back with travel. It's just, you're asking for it. And I had this sneaking suspicion that the Bulls game may not go great. And it started out and like, it looked like it was going to go okay. But then every time they kind of had an opportunity there in the first half to like put together a few defensive stops to extend, they could never get over the hump of like having like a 9-point lead. Like they had opportunities and they just couldn't put it together, and then that of course led to a third quarter that is that was not great. And then I'll just leave it there. So before I say anything else about this weekend's events, I will just turn it over to you and ask you your opening thoughts.
First off, thank you to everyone who showed up to our watch party. It was a really well attended event. We had a great time. I'm excited for the next one. I believe at T-Squared next week, Andrew, with the Thunder.
It is on Friday. We're going right back on the wagon. Yeah. So
that'll be great. I felt encouraged on Friday. I felt like, we've seen this team face lesser competition and at times play down to them. We've seen them play up to greater competition. I wasn't expecting a win, even though I predicted it, I wasn't expecting it. And the way that it shook out, even with the Thunder on the second night of a back-to-back, it told me that, this team can compete with anyone. And that's reassuring. We could say, well, they needed Deuce, but of course the Thunder could then point to Alex Cruz,
Chet and
Mitch and Chet. So in terms of balance, it was fine. But so much of that game, to me, it felt like it was lost on the margins. Yep. And it's unfortunate, of course, that the margins aren't fatter because of circumstances we will certainly talk about. But I was optimistic as a result, even despite the loss. Of course, having the second night of a back-to-back, an emotional night for the Bulls and their fans and Derrick Rose. There's a lot of energy and emotion going in there. I loved those sweatshirts that they had, the warm-ups. That was a really
very cool,
very nice touch. But it's the sort of thing where things have been going very well, and then you stumble. And of course, the moment you start to fall, it's easy for kind of everything to feel chaotic. And I understand why. I understand why people might say, well, look at the fact that they played against an elite team and they lost, even if it was in Oklahoma City. Sure. Or after that, can't believe they lost to the Bulls again. This is the second time this year. And it's weird because the Knicks the play-in teams have been their kryptonite to a great extent. I mean, they lost 2 games to the Hawks. They've lost 2 games to the Bulls. Yeah. They lost 1 to the Pacers, and both Nets games were close. So there's just something about that 7 to 10 range that's not exactly helping the Knicks case. But I felt better, honestly. I don't feel great. How can you feel great about a 2-2 week, especially when the first game, it was certainly better than the game before that against the Wizards. But I don't want to say I'm indifferent on the week. I'm not, but I feel good in some ways, and the ways I don't feel great about, I think, can be mitigated. But it's the first bad week that the Knicks have had in 5 weeks. So it's hard for me to feel too bad about it in the grand scheme of things.
As usual, we are mostly on the same page. And I dare I say, I think we are maybe 100% on the same page. I just maybe some ways that I would put it might be a little bit different. For one, I don't feel that this was a bad. I don't want to put words in your mouth. You said it wasn't a great week or something. Like, was it?
Relatively speaking, it was bad.
Yeah. Well,
generally, it was fine.
When you haven't lost in 3 weeks, relatively speaking, it was a bad week. My biggest takeaway from this week is also my biggest takeaway from this season, and I don't know if I put this succinctly or intelligibly after the Friday night game, but that Oklahoma City game for me was the proof of concept that I have been waiting for. Go out, you do it against an elite team, you show that you could defend for a significant stretch of a basketball game with the personnel that you have. No more wait till Mitchell Robinson gets back, no more trade for another wing, no more of this other stuff. Like, these are your guys. You went out there, and I know the Thunder are not the Cavs or the Celtics, but they're still the 7th best offense in the league. They are the 7th best half-court offense in the league, which is a notable thing for me. It's not like they get all their points in transition. Half-court, they're still pretty darn good. And you went out there and you frustrated the hell out of them. And you showed also, and again, I want to honor the fact that Caruso and Holmgren were out, but I'm gonna also, with that caveat, throw in the fact that the Knicks could not buy a 3-pointer this entire game. So I don't know if those two exactly cancel out, but I know, again, and I consider myself a fairly even-keeled, level-headed fan when it comes to most things. I am taking their offensive performance for the vast majority of that Thunder game with 0 grains of salt. I think they went out, they proved that this offense could function against anybody, basically. And because you're not going to find a defense that the league has given us in the last quarter century, at least, probably longer than that, better than this Thunder team. With that out of the way, they went out and it's not even what they did against the Bulls, because, again, second night of a back-to-back, and the Bulls shot 8,000% from 3, 54.1% if you want to be exact. And stuff happens. Sometimes Kobe White goes 9 for 11 from behind the arc. It happens. But we have arrived at a situation where it is not DEFCON 1 or even DEFCON 2 or 3. I would argue it probably might not even be DEFCON anything. But I think for a lot of fans, for the vast majority of fans, it is a DEFCON something where this team has a problem. And the problem is they don't have enough guys. And in conjunction with the fact that for a lot of people, the problem is that they maybe have enough guys, or maybe if the guys that they have would have been given a longer leash thus far, things would be better than they are. But they're playing, the starters are playing all these minutes because you have a coach that is not willing to give the subs more minutes. And this is a DEFCON something for a vast majority of the fan base. For me, does it rise anywhere close to the level of the proof of concept on the positive column that I just talked about? No, because that, to me, what we saw on Friday night and and it's not just Friday night, so it was building up to that over the course of the year. Again, I've said it a few times now. This team could win a championship. Are they maybe a depth piece away from winning a championship? Sure, but they have the core. They have the foundation that is capable of winning a championship. I believe that. I don't care what kind of fan you are. That should be the most important thing to you. What we're dealing with now with this minutes, with this depth, with the coaching thing, that's a level 2, a level 3 thing down, but it is something. And it is now something that we need to talk about, and something that we need to figure out. Okay, what's the solution? Who's at fault? What can be done? What should be done? And that's the way that I would sum up where we are at right now. Do you disagree with any of that?
I don't disagree. And I'll further it by saying, just with that Thunder game alone, every player who played on the Thunder was not a rookie except for AJ Mitchell. And AJ Mitchell, 22 years old, off-ball player.
Yeah.
It's difficult when your team, as constructed, hasn't had the time and patience that it takes to stock up, because the Thunder have been able to slow roll it and consistently add to their core.
Can you say why?
Can I say why?
Yeah, why have they been able to, whereas the Knicks don't? I have an answer for that. I'm curious if you have the same answer.
Well, my answer, it stems back from the Paul George trade, where the Clippers traded Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and the Thunder were able to take a very good player and help turn him into an elite player. And on top of that, while they were doing that, they were able to get Chet Holmgren, and they drafted Jalen Williams, and they were able to then consistently add using the available pieces and the resources, such as cap space, to their advantage to sign away and retain their own talent and keep building and have continuity, have a coach in line with everything that they want to do. And they've made other good selections as well. Casey Wallace is really good. They obviously went out and got Isaiah Hartenstein. They traded for Alex Caruso, who wasn't even playing. Like, they found complementary pieces that lift them up. And the Knicks have not been able to do that. And so one of the things that you actually go ahead, because then I want to get.
No, I just want to say the big difference between these two situations is the Thunder, because of where they play and because of their owner and their market, they could do a multi-season tank job that was as egregious as anything ever that went on in Philadelphia. The only difference is they had a person running the front office that knows how to play nicely with people around the league and the media and everybody loves Sam Presti. Whereas Philly had a guy who said, F you, I'm going to do it my way. And I'm not even going to try to make any bones about it. And that's why everybody looked the other way when the Thunder have been doing it. But there was forget pressure to win. They could go about this the way they wanted to go about it for several years. And it was the Knicks, the day that that's never going to happen here. It was never going to happen here. So I think to compare, it's apples and oranges. That's the only thing I wanted to get out of the way first.
Agree with, you can't quite tank the same way here with OKC. Not sure if I agree though with equating Philly and OKC.
Maybe it's a little bridge too far, but that's fair.
To me, because Hinkie had the Hinkie special of trying to screw players over contractually. I never got the sense.
Yeah, no. That didn't happen. Yeah.
They were fine losing games. They were comfortable with it. And that's their MO. And clearly it worked for them. And they've done a great job doing that. But, when we talk about this, we talk about depth at the Knicks level, because the Knicks do have depth. The problem here is, does Thibs trust said depth? Do the Knicks as a whole trust said depth? So I wanted to actually go through the last 6 months of transactions just to show where I'm going with this, right? So we know in June that the Knicks tried to trade for current Oklahoma City Thunder Alex Caruso. At least that's certainly what was mentioned. In all likelihood, as we've talked about, it would have cost Mitchell Robinson. Mitchell Robinson's not playing right now, so he's a non-factor. But you could have done that and still retain Precious Achiuwa. Didn't happen. Then the Knicks traded for Mikal Bridges, and that meant 0 rotation players going out, but bringing Mikal Bridges, Iron Man, leading the league in minutes per game, to the Knicks. Great. They didn't draft a player like Ryan Dunn, who a lot of Knicks fans really liked. Ryan Dunn, last I checked, day or two ago, shooting 30% from 3 on 10 attempts per 100 possessions. That's quite
after a hot start.
Right. So, and since that hot start just really cooled down. So it's a problem, of course, when you have someone who, yes, very good defensively, can soak up minutes, but if they're hurting you offensively, then there's a question of, are they adding the value that they need, especially from a rookie? Rookies, it's really hard to get winning minutes from them, especially if they play a consistent role. It's just a difficult thing. So they didn't draft Ryan Dunn. Instead, they drafted Bacome Dadier, and they got him to agree to the 80% of his rookie deal compared to 120%. That was a really important factor because with the second apron in place and what the Knicks needed to do, they were going to be hard capped somewhere. So it was really important to them to get that money down. So it's hard finding win now talent in the draft, rookie year, and get your finances in order so you can get the other things. Bacome, of course, is really more of a non-factor right now. Drafted Tyler Kolek, Kevin McCullough Jr., and Ariel Hukporti. Hukporty on the outside looking in, of course. There are a lot of centers on the team. McCullough is hurt. Kolek, I understand the argument about playing him. I really do. I'm all for him getting reps. He's also getting tremendous development in the G League. He's crushing it there. If there's a certain thought or aspect of, hey, maybe don't rush someone along. Of course, if you need to fill said need, it's important. But I think the other conversation that we're having, if Deuce McBride is healthy, it's a little different because we're not quite feeling the pinch points. But I understand why fans want to see Tyler Kolek. I believe he's going to have a really lengthy, solid career at worst. But I don't think he's quite ready. And I understand if Thibs certainly feels that way. After that, the Knicks re-signed OG Anunoby. No complaints there. All been very happy with it. Then one of the biggest blows that they faced, which was losing Isaiah Hartenstein, right? And it's not even Isaiah Hartenstein so great, hard to lose him. To me, it's always been really good player. Unfortunate that an asset walked out the door for nothing. Couldn't sign and trade him. Couldn't get anything back for him. Not even suggesting that the Knicks should have traded him. Just an unfortunate situation where he walked. But that's a rotation piece going out the door. There was interest, of course, in Mitchell Robinson around the league, but it wasn't enough for the Knicks to be able to move in. Of course, Mitch has been hurt due to the ankle injury when Embiid decided to play rough or dirty. Then the Knicks, of course, they tried to sign Alec Burks. That's what CP mentioned, and he went to Miami. So it's another rotation player leaving. Mm-hmm. On July 15th, they signed Cameron Payne. To me, Cameron Payne, always really more of a kind of not break glass in case of emergency, but someone that you wouldn't expect to have the level of responsibility that he certainly had to start the year. It's a depth piece, right? 9th, 10th man, good when you need him, but there's a clear lacking there. And the Knicks retained Precious Achiuwa towards the end of the month. That was really important for them. They needed depth. They needed, of course, a center, good player to keep on your team. So at that point, it's Brunson, Bridges, OG, Randall, and Mitch, who of course is hurt. Payne, DiVincenzo, Deuce, Hart, Precious, with Kolek, Dadier, Keita Bates-Diop, and Jericho Sims riding the pine. From there, right? Because we can agree, of course, what's the big issue? Well, there's a question of the overall talent of the team and who's going to play center. Keep going. They tried to sign Tyus Jones. They offered the taxpayer mid-level exception. Tyus Jones would have fit perfectly with what they want. Good shooter, finds guys in the corners. He runs an offense. Would have been great to soak up minutes. Of course, he didn't want that. He wanted the opportunity to go to Phoenix on a minimum contract to start. So it's another option, more options leading out the door. So then, of course, big trade. The Knicks give up Randall and DiVincenzo and also Keita Bates-Diop for Karl-Anthony Towns. And we can agree here. This is a great trade for the Knicks so far. Everything's proving to be great. Where the Knicks are maximizing their ceiling, but of course, they now traded another rotation piece for top-end talent. Two going out. Right, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Two going out and one coming in. So now you have Brunson, Hart, Bridges, OG, and Cat. Great. Awesome starting lineup. But then your bench is Payne, Deuce McBride, Precious Achiuwa, Mitchell Robinson, who's hurt, Tyler Kolek, Pakoma Dadier, and Sims. Then you sign Landry Shamet, and he gets hurt. So he now is no longer with the team. And then when you look at the market in October, there's no one good enough where it's worthwhile to sign them, where they're going to be a legitimate rotation piece. The market's dried up. You're $3.6 million under the second apron with 12 roster spots. You need 14, but you need to wait 14 days because of the math, and it makes sense. Just give it time so you don't hurt yourself there. Promote Hukporty to the two-way deal. Get Matt Ryan in the door. Then you waive Ryan as soon as Shamet's healthy. And here we are. And when I look at all of that, especially with a trade market that's just non-existent for the most part right now, outside of what the Nets are doing, it's tough. It's really difficult. And then with the Thunder game again, so it's Brunson, Hart, Bridges, OG, Cat, tried and true starting lineup. And then it's Payne, Shamet, and Precious. And I totally understand the rationale of play these guys more, play your bench more to take less time off of your starters. But again, I don't quite know, even if you play them, right? I've seen calls to play rookies like Dadier, Kolek.
Sure, yeah.
I understand why. I totally get why it would happen or why a fan would want that. I'm not saying it's wrong. it's just when you put players who are not really good in a position where then they continue to become not really good and it hurts the rest of your team. And maybe it does great. Maybe it works out well. But the Knicks have minutes that they just can't really afford to lose. And I understand Thibs' philosophy, which is these are the players I trust no matter what. And when it comes to winning games, I've got to trust them. Is it good for the greater good? Or maybe not. That's certainly up for discussion, up for debate. But the reason I wanted to just bring all this together was to show there is a depth problem, but it's not from a lack of trying. It's from a lack of avenues that the Knicks had to retain the best portions of their team and do what they wanted. And there were players in free agency that determined their control. There were other teams the Bulls traded for Josh Giddey instead of other pieces. That was what their MO was, and the Knicks certainly couldn't retain them. So,
who hit all three of his threes last night, by the way?
Correct. So it's unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
It's not the sort of thing where there's one thing we can point to. It's just a buildup of things that didn't go the Knicks' way, where they now need time, and time is not on their side this year. That's the biggest problem.
Quick break to tell you about our friends from Rocket Money. So the start of the new year, perfect time to get organized, set goals, and obviously prioritize what matters most. For me, a father of two daughters and a husband who is responsible for taking care of the family's finances, Rocket Money came in handy at the best possible time. I tell you, I signed up for many subscriptions over the course of my years as a dad, and as my daughters have gotten older, they don't need those subscriptions anymore. For instance, things that pertain to when they were a toddler or even when they were just born. I had completely forgotten that I had signed up for a number of those. By using Rocket Money, I was able to get a very clear idea of all of the subscriptions that I had, and I was able to see very obviously which ones I didn't need anymore. And now I no longer have them, so I'm saving money thanks to Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/game-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/game-on. rocketmoney.com/game-on. There's two different things going on here. There's the thing that you just went through beautifully. It was great. Which is, and because of the, and we could really, like, I think we could group everything you just talked about into two umbrellas. One umbrella is everything before the cat trade, in which the team did what it always did, trying to uncover every stone, trying to look behind, every boulder or whatever, or I'm getting these analogies from, to find just more depth. So you could be in a situation like they were in a little bit more than a year ago, when you had a guy on your bench that was like ready and waiting to step in to forget a 6-man role, to be like a 6-man of the year candidate in Deuce McBride. And he wasn't even on the court because you had so much depth, but you wanted to get back to that place where you were just, okay, we're looking for extra stuff. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for extra stuff. And then once you made the Towns trade because you felt you needed to make the Towns trade, I don't think anybody would argue that was not a good trade. That extra stuff that you could have maybe gotten if things had gone differently. Well, now all of a sudden it was no longer going to be extra stuff. It was going to be, we actually need this stuff. And so there was more of a glaring spotlight on what they were not for lack of trying, what they were not able to do before the cat trade because the cat trade happened. And then by that point in the summer, there's just nothing left to do. You got one more bite at the apple here, which we're going to record a second episode right after we're done recording this episode to see if there are anything that may come of those bites with this upcoming transaction cycle. But if we're being honest with ourselves, this front office, I would guess, when they had their final sit down as to whether to make the cat trade or not, there was probably some internal, what's the word I'm looking for? Like acceptance of the fact that, like, all right, we may not be able to put the total championship roster together for this season. We may have to wait until the summer of 2025 to get the last piece, or the last pieces. And I'm sure that was a very difficult decision for them, but I have to imagine in the room when they had that discussion, the alternative was like, well, okay, then what happens if we don't make this trade? Well, then if we don't make this trade, then we maybe never are in the position where like we're a piece away or a small piece away from being able to win a championship. So I think it was an easy decision, even if it was an imperfect one. That's half of the discussion. The other half of it is, okay, we're here now. What do we do? And like, no one watching the Bulls game could come away with any impression other than that this is a tired basketball team. And it's like they gave it everything they had against the Thunder on Friday night. And then after halftime, now, again, all of this stuff is Venn diagrams with overlapping middle parts where it's like, well, the truth is somewhere in there. Did they give up 1 million 3-pointers to the Bulls because they were tired and they couldn't make the proper rotations? Or did the Bulls just have one of those nights? And would we be having a very different conversation right now if the Bulls just had an average shooting night? You know, let's say they hit 42% from three as opposed to 52% from three. And let's say the Knicks, instead of hitting, what did they end up making? 30, excuse me. I was being hopeful, 26.7% from three. Let's say instead of that, they made 35% from three. We're having a very different conversation. If Campaign doesn't draw what I would consider to be a bullshit offensive foul on a Landry Shamet made three, and the Knicks cut the lead to 5 at that point, maybe that by itself could have shifted this whole thing in a different direction. We'll never know. But we're sitting here right now. Everybody knows the starters are playing a ton. Everybody knows in a perfect world they would not be playing this much. And it's merely a question of like, is it worth the pivot? And I guess what I want to ask you is, I think there's 2 different mindsets out there. There was the mindset of, well, Thibs, if he could be playing these guys just as much, or sorry, playing the starters much less and playing the bench guys more, and they would not suffer from it because with that additional experience, these bench guys would just, you know, be better because like the more you play a reserve, clearly the better they get. I think that opinion is out there. I do not buy into that. I think the other part of it is the trade-off worth it? And we're sitting here right now, we're looking at a team that is, they have the 5th best net rating in the league right now. They have 2 wins for every loss. And they are, what's their lead in the Eastern Conference right now over the 4 seed? I guess it's 3.5 games, something like that. Whereabouts, whatever they are, over the Magic. 3 games over the Magic, who they play, we should say, on Monday night. And I think there's a sentiment like, so what? Maybe it costs you a couple games. Maybe it costs you 2 games, 3 games in terms of wins. That's still a better path than going the way you're going and playing the starters as many minutes. And that to me that's worth a debate if you're interested in having it. Obviously, I know where I fall on it, and I also know that I'm in the minority, the vast minority. So, where are you falling on? And do you agree with my characterization of this conversation? I guess.
Or 2 different things. I'm trying to figure out which one. Are you talking about the overarching makeup of the team, or how it's currently operated?
We've accepted the makeup of the team is what it is, and there's nothing anybody could do or could have done anything about that. I'm talking about how it's being operated right now.
I generally agree with the direction Thibs is going, just because the biggest challenge is here for me, right? Okay, so the 3 players on the bench who played because Deuce was out, all 3 of them were not highly in demand this summer. They just weren't, right? I mean, yes.
Would you agree that at a certain point in time this summer, I don't think anybody thought any of the 3 players that played off the bench last night were going to be a part of the Knicks rotation when healthy?
I didn't. No, I thought maybe Precious would get some time just because of the center chaos that was there. But of course,
sure, but if we're talking about Deuce, DiVincenzo, and Mitch,
I agree.
Then there's no more minutes left. Like that's it.
Right. And Payne felt like a high character guy. You bring in, that's the role he has largely embraced in his career. Landry Shamet has been more on the decline. They found guys that work for them. But I mean, remember the conversation where it was about Davis Bertans' interest? Davis Bertans, who's currently in Europe, and understandably so. Like they're scraping the bottom of the barrel when it came to this summer. And now what they were left with is you either have players who teams in general just didn't trust to be prioritized, or you have rookies who just simply maybe aren't ready, or there's a lack of trust that's there. I mean, the thing that I go back to often, and I've talked about before, I don't view it as a negative. I view it as a learning experience, which is when Deuce McBride was put in Game 6 for the Miami series in the second quarter, and it went to hell. And it was a learning experience for him. Yeah. And you either win or you learn. And the Knicks learned a lot that day, and I'm sure Deuce did too. Yeah. And it's that sort of thing where it's okay. We could put Tyler Kolek into this game, but also if the Thunder, the number one team in the West, smell blood, what's going to happen? Do you trust Jalen Brunson, a little banged up, tired, going out and doing his thing, or do you trust Kolek? And I'm sure Tom Thibodeau, 11 times out of 10, would say, I'm going to trust Jalen Brunson. He's been there. He's one of the best players in the NBA. That's my guy. I'm in favor of looping these players in for more time. I'm just saying I understand completely why Thibs would not do it. And we can talk about stubbornness as well, but it's two sides of the coin, right? We can play the hypothetical game of you play these other players and things go well and you rest up the other players that are your best players, and it's great. Or you start losing minutes, and then it's the feeling of, well, there are winnable games that are now lost, but then you go back to, well, there are winnable games that are being lost because of the minutes. I get both sides. I think I ultimately err on, I do understand trusting your best players, but I'm sure they're tired, and I don't want them to be run down as a result.
I think you phrased it perfectly. I mean, and we should say at the top, or we should have said at the top, we should say now that, like, when the Knicks did make their little second half run last night, like Cameron Payne and Landry Shamet were on the court for that. And I thought Cam Payne actually played well last night. I think Benji was looking at his grades. I think Payne got the third best grade of anybody, and that was because OG Anunoby and Josh Hart and Mikal Bridges, like, those guys were not good. Defensively, the wings that were so great on Friday night, none of them were particularly good, and it was a really rough Hart game. So like that, I think, is evidence for, like, hey, give these guys a little bit more rope. Like, maybe they'll show you something more than they've shown. I think that it's not a little bit more rope. I'm fine with, but I also think, like, again, role players are role players for a reason, and typically, the more you see them, the less the returns are going to be. Like, I know we've been spoiled here over the years where we're like, guys take on bigger roles and it's like, oh my God, look at this. But again, it's a chicken or the egg conversation. Are they playing better because they're getting more minutes, or are they getting more minutes because they are showing themselves to be more ready behind the scenes, and that is why they get the minutes? And we can't sit here and know the answer to that question. What we can know is that this head coach is this head coach. He is not going to change. And there comes a point sometimes where it goes from this place of, okay, we could have an interesting, if not annoying, dialogue about the possibilities here and what should be done. And it goes to another level when you have Karl-Anthony Towns. I don't know that I would say he was hobbling quite yet, but, like, clearly hurt towards the end of the last game against the Bulls in the fourth quarter as it went down. An opportunity to take him out of the game with, I should probably go back and get this exactly right, but, like, I was watching and I'm like, get him out of the game. Is it possible? Is there a 0.8% chance that you could come back and win this game? Sure. Is it worth it? No. And this is me saying this. And they didn't get him out. And then he went and he converted the last field goal attempt, the last shot attempt, made the free throws. Then he came out of the game, hobbled back to the locker room. We should say, for anybody who missed it, he's apparently going to be fine. He was working on it after the game. Bondi reported that, like, he doesn't think he sustained anything serious. So, like, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, no harm, no foul, because that's the sort of thing where it's like, man, I would do anything for this head coach. I would run through a fucking wall for him. There's no bigger fan of Tom Thibodeau than me. And even I could sit here and recognize, like, someone should have probably tapped him on the shoulder and be like, hey, because he's not thinking of this. This is not a concern of his. He is just thinking, how do I win this game? And until it's very clear that I can't win the game anymore, I'm going to do everything in my power from an X's and O's standpoint, from a who I'm putting in the game standpoint, to try to win it. And that I hope it doesn't come back to bite him, but it felt like last night was one of those times where, again, it ventured into the point of, I don't want to say absurdity, but it was, again, I was watching it and I was like, get him out of there, right?
Well, I'm sure that in Thibs' head, it was not just, hey, we're going to try to win this game, but it was, if you look at the Bulls, they've got all of their starters out there too.
Yeah,
and I don't know if Billy Donovan could have also said, hey, we feel good about this game, but the Knicks have all their starters out. So then you almost get into a prisoner's dilemma of who's going to blink first. Which team is going to say we're either punting on the game or we are comfortable risking this game because we know if we sacrifice a double-digit lead that, I mean, that's obviously very bad, but the odds of it happening are very slim. And I feel like Thibs, of course, has looked at the rarest of occasions where a team has made incredible comebacks and has clung to them in such a way where he's just scarred. He's seen it firsthand. And it's almost like you learn from that mistake. But then it's, well, what other mistakes can you possibly make? You know, I think a lot has been said over the years about Thibs and Derrick Rose, especially on Derrick Rose night.
Sure.
It's relevant where it's the injury factor. And I think the one time I felt it was warranted was in that playoff game, of course, with the ACL tear, where it really wasn't that close. And you probably want to take him out. But it was also the injuries beforehand that were not Thibs' fault, but because the body's kinetic, it all added up. And then it was a very unfortunate situation and an injury that changed the trajectory of Derrick Rose's career. He's not going to change. Thibs is not, there are things, there are core principles that we have. We are all as people capable of changing, but that doesn't mean we're going to change. He has adapted very well with a lot of the things that we as Knicks fans had feared going into him being the head coach.
Yep.
But this is one of those things that it's just a non-starter, clearly. And it feels like a lose-lose for Thibs, because if the Knicks win a game but go all out with the minutes, then it's like, well, okay, great, you won, but think of the risk. And then when someone does get hurt, it's like, well, see, look at that. Even if the minutes are, let's say a player were to get hurt very early into the game, there's still going to be this thought process of, well, if it weren't for the games beforehand, I don't know if that's valid. I know that when DeMarcus Cousins tore his Achilles, that to me felt valid because he was playing 40 plus minutes a night, played in the overtime. I get it, and I can understand why you look at that situation, Kat, and think there's some similarities. There may be a few, but it's not that close to me. But that's just what you get with Thibs. You get a lot of good, but you're going to get stubbornness. But all coaches have their own levels of stubbornness. It may just not be as apparent to us. And the last thing I'll say before I turn it back is we've been very lucky as Knicks fans because we're New Yorkers. We're also basketball fans. We're Knicks fans as well. We're always going to hone in on an issue, even if things are going great.
Yes.
We're kind of like Thibs in that way, where there's a lot that we care about, but we're going to zero in on the things that bother us. And this is one of the things that bothers us. And it's in complete contradiction with Thibs' philosophy. And there's not going to be much change here. So if that's the case, I've kind of just accepted it. That's why I'm not upset about it, because I've accepted that this is simply the situation, and it's now up to the front office to help sort things out for Thibs and work with him to find a solution that makes us, I mean, it's going to make them happier, but ideally makes us happier as a result as well.
That was again, very well put. I'm not going to sit here and I'm trying to blow smoke up anyone's ass. I not only accept it, I embrace it, and I love it, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. This is an organization where winning for a very long time in this organization. Winning was less of a priority than it was for any other organization of professional sports. The priority was some nonsense or another. And you brought in a coach for whom, I mean, the Lombardi phrase isn't even strong enough. Winning isn't everything. It's the only thing. No, it's everything. It's the only thing. It's all of the things for this human being. And despite that fact, like you mentioned growth over the years. I'm looking at him right now. Karl-Anthony Towns is averaging 34.6 minutes. That's fine. Jalen Brunson is averaging 35 minutes. That's fine. OG Anunoby is averaging 36.5 minutes. I've said it a few times. Is that a minute too high? Is it a minute and a half too high? Somewhere around there? Sure. Okay. Great. And then Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart are two players I'm convinced could play 48 minutes a night, and it wouldn't make a damn of difference. And they probably want to. If I honestly, I don't even. I think if you ask them, like, yeah, you want to play 40 minutes? Yeah, sure. I don't really give a shit, because they're just built differently. And like, to your point, credit the front office for, instead of fighting Thibs on this, hey, how about we go out and get the guys that are going to actually. There are like 5 players in the league who jive with this sickness, and they got 2 of them, and they're great. Like, they're awesome players. So I look at those averages and I'm like, I understand it's a big deal right now because this weekend like kind of came to a head and they came out and they're so tired of the Bulls and the whole thing. But like, it's, I don't know. They need, all that said, I'll do my, Andrew, I don't know if we have the graphic ready. I'll do my one big takeaway. My one big takeaway from this weekend, shout out to Juan, please. They did a fantastic job making sure the beverages were flowing on Friday night. Go to drinkwanplease.com, by the way. My one big takeaway is I think they need to make some kind of a move before the deadline. And I use the word need with trepidation, because if I'm saying today on January 5th that they need to make a move, that should mean that if they don't make a move and we're sitting here and we're talking on February 6th at 4:01 p.m., that I should lose my shit. I'm not going to lose my shit if they don't, because like we don't know the market. We don't know what's actually available. But like, all things being equal, I kind of feel like it would be in their best interest to really try very hard to do something.
Totally agree. And I think the other factor too is calling up TJ Warren.
It can't hurt.
Sure. Which also, again, can't happen right now because of the amount of money the Knicks have to give. But we could say it can't hurt. I don't know if it can help.
It might not.
Like this thing, when you look at the buyout market, these are traditionally players who don't play a whole lot. It's depth to be on a winning team that could maybe give them a better opportunity or at least a better chance of winning. But it's hard to count on buyout players to typically give you a good return on investment, because it's less than one season that you're getting like probably 25 games of a player who has not worked within the flow of your team. You're in the home stretch of the NBA season, and then you get to the playoffs and they're not sniffing the floor in the playoffs. So like, we'll certainly have more of this conversation later, but I agree with you. And I'll make my one big takeaway echoing the conversation that we've had, which is this is simply a team that has, again, traded depth for top end talent. And if the Knicks were to go into this year where they didn't have to give up Dante DiVincenzo and they gave up Mitchell Robinson instead, and then we're talking about, to the point earlier, of starting 5, Deuce, DiVincenzo, Precious Achiuwa, right? And then you can get any other pieces on the ancillary pieces around. That's 7, maybe 7.5 players that I really trust that soak up those minutes. That's a playoff rotation, maybe plus or minus one other guy. You feel like there is that fallback, and the Knicks, they simply don't have that. And part of that is their choosing. And I fully respect and appreciate their choosing, because we're seeing the 3rd best offense in the NBA right now. But it also meant they're hurting. And I just don't blame it on the sunshine. Don't blame it on the moonlight. John, don't blame it on the good times. Blame it on the apron. You got to blame it on the second apron. That's a huge reason for why the Knicks have not been able to do what they want to do.
I think we did that conversation justice. Andrew, what do you, any thoughts before we move on to a very abbreviated game ball and detention segment?
Yes. shout out to Juan, please. According to Juan, please, Knicks fans, listen up. Show your tickets at the Mas Tacos in Penn Station and get a discount on Juan, please. They are now at the Mas Tacos in Penn Station. So if you're leaving the game, we will be at the game tomorrow night. If you show your ticket stub to the Mas Tacos in Penn Station, you get a discount on a Juan Please, which we, of course, partnered with, and it is delicious. If I'm saying it, you know it's true. So yeah, we don't know the discount specifically just yet. So just go there and ask what the discount is. But I'm getting the text from Noah now. Shout out to Juan, please. Thank you for sponsoring this segment. In the interest of shortening minutes, something our head coach is still learning how to do, let's go rapid fire through these next couple of segments.
Yep. Okay, Game Ball, giving us somebody who has done something good this week that deserves to be singled. I got there. Took me a little while, but I got there. Out for their achievement. I go first. I'm going with Karl-Anthony Towns. Karl-Anthony Towns for the week. I'm just going to read the stats. 31 points per game, coming off 44 piece against the Bulls. 58% shooting. Is that good? I think it's good. 37.5% from three, 80% from the line. 13.8 defensive rebounds. He averaged 18 rebounds this week. 3.5 assists, 2 turnovers. And if you're looking at plus minus, putting aside or out of all of the guys who get major minutes, certainly out of all of the starters, Karl-Anthony Towns is far and away in first, which should tell you everything you need to know.
That's the easy choice. Would have gone there. I know he had a poor offensive game against the Bulls, but I'm going to go with Josh Hart.
Okay.
Of course, had back-to-back triple doubles, the second one coming in this week. I thought, of course, the Ben Taylor incident, the fact that he's been teed up in 3 straight games, that's certainly frustrating. And I think that Fred VanVleet was onto something when he called out Ben Taylor as being terrible at his job. So Fred VanVleet's words, I won't say that they're incorrect, but it certainly seems that way around the league with some other players. But Josh Hart, so much heart and soul with him on the team. I'll give it to him.
Okay. You are up again for detention, which is given to someone, a player, coach, or entity that deserves to sit down and think about what they did for a while. Jeremy, what say you?
I think I'm just going to give it collectively to... I just feel like the offense has been really sluggish in second halves. Like feel free to tell me if you disagree here, but I thought that the looks, the opportunities, things felt rushed. They felt contested. Felt like they weren't back this week to, in a lot of ways, being their usual selves. The Jazz game, of course, they didn't have Jalen Brunson. It wasn't that close, but it was a little closer certainly than times would allow. It's the sort of thing where I feel like they're not really playing the Knicks brand of basketball that we've come to see from what the highest of highs can look like. And I think that's a collective issue. So I will go with kind of spread it all around for everyone.
I think that is very fair for sure. I could go in a couple. There's part of me that doesn't want to give it to anybody because I think this was. Again, I'm still very high on this team, and I still like basically what everybody is doing. That said, this is I can't really say this is backed by statistics. I'm going to give it to Precious Achiuwa. I know he's still working his way back from injury, and it's an adjustment, and they're asking a lot of him. They're asking him to be both a backup center and at times a 4. Who has to kind of adjust the way that he plays based on who he is on the floor with. I guess I'm giving this as much to myself as I'm giving it to Precious. I just expected more, a little bit more consistency from Precious this year. And it's not like it's one moment. It's not like it's one game, but I just know there have been times definitely over the last week in particular where I'm like, man, because he was a difference maker in a positive way so many times last year. And I don't feel like we've gotten that player back, maybe with 1 or 2 exceptions since he's returned from injury. So I'm going to give it to Precious.
Sure. And, I think it's valid. To me, I've had lower expectations for Precious just in general.
But smart.
But it's kind of coming back down to earth as well. So that makes sense. I kind of want to change my answer. I mean, I stand by what I said, but I feel like I got to put Jimmy Butler in detention.
Oh, fuck Jimmy Butler.
Look, man.
Sorry.
No. I mean, it's valid. Like, I'm sorry that I can't believe that he makes Pat Riley look agreeable here, but it's true. You want $50+ million to take 25 games off while you sulk in the corner and make your team look bad. Meanwhile, you make Shams Charania, who's quite possibly the best newsbreaker in the NBA, try to make him look like a fool. And then in the end, you come out and say you want to get your joy back when so much of the joy from the outside looking in feels like it starts and stops with you yourself. I mean, dude's playing in Miami. He's getting a ton of money to play in a beautiful place with no state tax. That's pretty great. And he gets to play basketball. And I understand that Pat Riley hasn't done the best to build around him, but I'd say Jimmy Butler, mid-range assassin in an era where we're seeing so many 3-pointers being shot and being attempted. And for Jimmy, to how he shrinks the floor doesn't really help. So, just that's kind of the way he's decided to go. Again, I can't believe that I have to sympathize with Pat Riley. That's how bad it is. So I'm going to put Jimmy Butler in detention along with the Knicks spacing issues.
I think that works. Okay, predictions. We have a 4-game week, another 4-game week. Thankfully, none of these 4 games are on the second night of a back-to-back, although there will be a Monday game after the Sunday game against the Bucks that's coming against the Pistons. That'll be obviously a back-to-back. But this week, 4 home games in a row. The Knicks, I think it was James Edwards III's tweeted this the other day. If they don't want to get on a plane for like the next month and a half, they don't have to. Home against Orlando. That's our KFS outing. Shout out to everybody who'll be joining us for that. Wednesday, Toronto. Friday, Oklahoma City, the rematch. And then Sunday versus the Milwaukee Bucks. That is a 3 p.m. start. I'm not overthinking this. I'm going to go 3-1. I thought briefly about 2-2, but I did not want to put you in a position where you could take 3-1 to win the week. So I'm going to go 3-1.
Would have gone 3-1, so I respect that. I will go 2-2. I got burned with going 4-0 last time. Maybe I get burned by doing it in the reverse, but I'm going to go 2-2. Hope you win.
I hope I win as well. Okay.
I'm sure you do.
Okay. That is it for this episode. We stay tuned. Keep an eye on your podcast feed because there'll be another episode from us dropping, I believe, midnight Sunday going into Monday, which is going to be the second Cap or No Cap from the great Jeremy Cohen, which we are about to record right now. Andrew, anything before we get out of here?
Yes. Look on your screen.
Oh, yeah. Another watch party this Friday. So, again, I'll second Jeremy. Shout out to everybody who came for the first watch party this past Friday. It was really an awesome time. And like for about an hour there where they were, felt like boat racing the Thunder. I don't think I've ever been at a better atmosphere that wasn't in Madison Square Garden itself. So come out and enjoy the sequel this Friday. T-Squared Social. We will be getting started an hour before tip-off at 6:30 p.m. And again, in partnership with JUAN, Please, 42nd Street, just on the block from Grand Central Station. We look forward to seeing everybody there.
And no pregame pod. That's it. No pregame pod. Check out Cap or No Cap when it goes live.
There we go. Okay. Thanks.
Jeremy, say the other thing about people going to the game.
Oh, yes. For those who are coming to the game as you're here tonight, we will be meeting at Pen 6 beforehand for a few drinks before we head on over. I believe that'll be 6 o'clock, John?
6
to 6.
6 p.m. at Pen 6. And like, hey, if you're not coming to the KFS suite, and you just want to come by and say hi to us, come by Pen 6. We'll be there at 6 o'clock. All right.
Now
on that note, we will bid you adieu. And again, you will see us back in our same clothes in another episode posting shortly. Peace out.
Shortly as in 12 hours from now.
There you go.